Hey, this is Renew Education, and let's look at this case. This case, I'm talking about how dentistry has gone wrong in this patient going on here. So, yeah, dentistry treatment gone wrong is what I'm titling this one. And the reason why is because there's a couple of things that I don't think people pay as much attention to as they should, or they're not tracking things as they should. One, the thing I really hate are apicoectomies because it destroys all the bone at the area that you really are limiting bone, especially when you have a constricted area right the apical part of the root, and then somebody chops it away. And endodontist or somebody skilled at doing apicoectomies, which is called also a reverse root canal for those that don't know. And she had two of them done, and there's pretty much destroyed the possibility of working in these sites, and it becomes very difficult to work on those sites. The second problem I have is when orthodontists rush to move teeth, or somebody that's doing orthodontics rush the movement of the teeth, and they clip the ends of the roots, so now the teeth are actually shorter. In this weird way, you have less support of the actual tooth available, and as much as it's just the root tip, it still matters for a lifetime, so 20 or 30 years later, when that patient is now removing their teeth or has other issues, it does matter at that point. This case also gets into decay here on the posterior, so we lose our posterior stoppage. Here, our nerve is here, and we have a poor amount of ridge height, and it goes into the red. So let's look at our treatment assessment here. This is a little bit of a long one. I'll try to go fast. And I have a red ridge height. That's due to the lower left side. I have an orange detached gingiva. I have orange posterior support, orange flare and orthodontic situation. I have an orange failing front teeth, and you can see on this one that the teeth are chipping and things. I have a red for the IA nerve position. I have a yellow constriction, and I have a light green facial bone. And the quality of bone is fine too, the density. Those aren't the issues, so I'm just highlighting what I see as the issues concerning this case. So where do we start with a case like this? So let's look deeper into the CT. We're probably going to start with the problem spot that we can deal with that has the infected areas right here and right here. This is already hopeless, but it's not destroying the bone. So let's take a look at number 4, and we can see what's actually happening there. So here's where an apicoectomy happened, and now the tooth is cracked or totally failing. Now all the bone is blown away. So there isn't really any good grafting solutions here. You're going to be stuck trying to put particulate graft, trying to build that out. If you can, it's only by the grace of God, really, or the bone next to it. So the only hope you really have on growing that kind of bone is this bone on the mesial side of the root here, or the distal side here, helping grow it across. If you can restructure this with some sort of mesh or something in that area, if you're that talented, I would say that's an advanced skill. That would be great, but not a lot of people do that work. And here's another situation. If you try doing a matrix with an implant, that could possibly maybe take like a 13. This is something I don't personally do, have not done, but this would be a case for that too, where I know Hyoscine has a kit, and you would place it something like this. You get a good amount of bone, and it has a titanium mesh that screws on like an abutment and holds this particulate graft into that site. It's not easy, but it can be done. So it's not a completely hopeless site here at all. It's just a matter of how advanced are you. So this is definitely an advanced case, trying to bring the bone out here. and the predictability is still unknown to me since I don't do those types of border grafts with. If somebody out there that does do those, that sees this video, please comment on it. But that's a way to take care of this in a 5-6 month period. Otherwise, you're trying to reconstruct this bone, and then you're kind of stuck with like, okay, well, how much bone am I going to have left after the patient pays for a bone, guided bone regeneration in this kind of scenario? It is very hard to accomplish and make sure that it heals back. You may end up with some bone, so let's say it's not a complete failure and your bone level goes maybe to here and then here. This is probably a likely scenario for most doctors, that they'll get about that much bone back after a 4 to 5 month healing period. So if we're going to grab an implant, then we're going to go to a smaller diameter one, and we can still do, well, let's do 11 and a half. We'll place that in there. So you can really see what is possible with this case before you even start. The whole point about these case studies and really learning how to treatment plan with the CT when you get into reconstructive type stuff or full arch stuff, you can actually see then what it really mean when you do put an implant that far in and you only have so much healing. So that's the possibility here for the implant. I personally don't like that, so I would not choose this methodology. I would choose to then go, okay, well, here's for the patient to choose. The reality is that might be the reality of the bone. It might be a reality of the bone that you might get a better result and bring the bone back up where you should have it, which would be nice, because then we can try to bring that implant up higher up, which then won't drag down the adjacent bone. So we don't want to, over concern the patient either, but this is the reality check. Personally, I think that the money should be spent on implants down here, or trying to figure out how to solve this problem or now this problem. There's multiple problems going on here. The most predictable thing in this site to me is a 3-unit bridge. So already has a crown, recurrent decay here, possibly decay, maybe decay under here. So to me, a 3-unit bridge is appropriate and fine. If they want to invest in a graft for the site, great. If you want to try out membranes and techniques and titanium mesh, great. But it all gets very expensive, and that's something that all patients are concerned with. So I want to now address the lower side to that, because if we can fix that with a 3-unit bridge, it takes only 2 weeks. Then we really have our work cut out for us here, because this is non-restorable. It's a hopeless case, and we got premolar, so that means we have premolar molar that we got to work with. And let's take a look at that bone. So that bone right here in the site looks pretty darn good, and our IA nerve on this right side actually is really good. So I'm not too worried about it. My treatment assessment is for the left side, not for this right side. But the bone quality is good. Everything looks good. You can put an implant in there, and that's a great beginner's case, right? So you've got a couple things going on here. You've got an advanced case for the upper, and you have more of a starter case for the bottom. So let's take a 4.2 by 10, and that works out just fine. And we can do an 11 and a half, of course. And then let's look into that mesial socket site. Can you do an immediate placement? Because we've got a really nice spread here. We have a non-generous bone here. And we have to just see where our IA nerve actually is, which is possibly right here. I don't think that's it. I think this is it here. So here we have a nice amount of facial bone, which is great. I'm not too worried about that. And we would do something fatter. Let's look at a 10 by 5. Just to kind of get an idea of what that could look like. Here it is. Let's grab that. Let's throw that in. So let's just see, is that an okay immediate placement? I'm going to drop it down a couple millimeters. I'm coming onto the nerve. So we're still away from it. You just got to really be careful on going any further than that with your drill, because you're going to be right on the nerve here. Now, this isn't, you know, totally fleshed out, but surgically you're probably going to end up like this when you actually place the implants. So that's not a bad scenario. You're going to get your premolar and molar occlusion here. You get this. So you can solve the right side here pretty easily. So that's the way I would probably recommend to the patient. Forget all the bells and whistles here. If you want to learn, you want to do pro bono stuff, that's great. Or if you just have that skill and you know you can build that back and that's what you want to do and that's what you want to recommend to the patient, just be aware that the cost might be formidable when they also know that if they are informed correctly that they can get a 3-unit bridge. So that's that case on this right side. Now let's look at the left side, because this is going to be a much more difficult area here to deal with. Now our upper second premolar site, that's also in jeopardy here, that's hopeless. We have to figure out what are we going to do here. Once again, you can see that we have natural substructures here, or teeth, that you can do a 3-unit bridge. So I'm not going to get into discussing that, because that's the possibility, like on that right side. The left side is the same. Here's what this looks like. So this is pretty beat up tooth here. It looks like it's fractured. It doesn't look healthy. And we've got this truncated root. So maybe there wasn't an apico that happened here. Maybe this is due strictly to orthodontics, but definitely is a problem. That facial plate is just about gone. So you definitely need to take this out and graft that site as fast as possible and try to maintain some sort of bone. So you'll probably get the bone to be about there. If you place an implant into that site, you are looking at something, you can do probably 4.2 by 10 is my guess. It's more about the height upward than it is probably about the implant so much. So let's look at that. So here we go. We can bring this here. And that's not too bad. I would say go for that, graft that. You can maintain the bone. That's fairly predictable. And you should be able to get your implant into that area. So the upper left is fine. You can make the occlusion happen here. And actually, this is this is kind of a funny scenario. Here's a canine, and here's one premolar. So somehow also the patient lost a premolar, so this molar becomes even more important. So let's look at the bottom here. What can you actually do here? Doesn't look very good. And let's find where that foramen actually is. I'm going to go to this shot here. We're going to look down here, and that might be the nerve there. And let's find that foramen so we can follow it. We're going to see it open up right here, and there we go. Okay, so there it opens up. That's our foramen coming out, so we know our nerve is right in here and channeling right there. So if we want to mark where that is, that's the height of that. So I know here that it's that same height across there. So that's where we can't cross, and that's where the foramen is. And let me restructure this around our new arch. And we can just go like this. Okay, so that's a little nicer. And let's go to 15. Clean that up a little bit better. So let's look at this site right here. And can we get anything more than that first premolar? Can we get something, maybe 2 premolar sized teeth? And let's plant it right here. This looks good. So yes, you can. Let's put a 3.5 or 3.7 in there. By you can do, let's see, 11 looks like it'll fit. Oh, maybe a little long. A little long because the drill is going to go past that. So we don't want that. That's too long. And let's change that. That's a little better. Probably use sinus burrs for this just so you don't get anything end cutting there. Now let's look at the next site. Past that would be about here. Maybe straighten that up a tad more so it's more in line with occlusion. Something like that. Now our IA nerve runs a bit high here, unfortunately, so it limits the amount of bone here. Probably let's try an 8 millimeter length, and that could be in a 3/7. Let's try the 4/2 by 8.5. And here's where it gets really tricky. I know that there are companies that make a 7. So let's see, I think I have a 7 in this library right here, 4.2 by 7. So this is where I don't like doing things like this, but you know, in this case, you can try that. You can try like a Bicon, smaller Bicon one, but Bicon you really have to bury to make those really nice and successful. You've got this weird angulation with that premolar. It's kind of forcing us into this angulation. You don't have a lot of room here. So this is not a good site here to be working in the first place. So that's why I warned the patient about something like this. You can make this successful, but it's very difficult because of what your starting point is. So the question I would pose is, do you splint or do you not splint those crowns? It's probably more on a favorable level to splint them than not to splint them. And that's just from case by case choice, not anything reality check there. I would say it would probably help this one to have transfer a little bit more of the load. But you can start to bring back the left side of the occlusion on this case when you start thinking about trying to get something smaller that you don't like, but the patient could probably chew on that when it's combined and ligated together. So that's an interesting case. There's a lot of stuff going on. Some of it's more at an advanced level from here or up here, trying to restore it depending on what you're trying to do. This is a more beginning level, starter level. This is more of a skilled level. This one also could be a starter level where you take the tooth out and graft it, let that heal up. That would be just fine. This is definitely an advanced level. Anything close to the nerve here would be considered more at an advanced level. So that's it for this one. And yeah, tune into more of the case studies. You'll learn a lot. If you keep watching them, you'll start to understand the process and how to kind of get yourself out of hot water as you go along. But subscribe to us on YouTube and like us on Facebook and look for some of our live streams. Okay, great, thanks.